Welcome everyone to the Office of Public Defense Services monthly provider call. Just so everyone is fully aware, and Autumn, if I don't say everything I need to, please jump in. But as everyone knows, we record these calls and the meeting, so it will all be recorded. And by joining it, you accept that you are part of a recorded call. I think that's all I need to say about that. First of all, I just want to let everybody know, give some updates on some new people that have joined PDSC's OPDS. First of all, we have a new commissioner. So we were up to 9. We lost a couple, including one to retirement and one to becoming a judge. Which was Judge Welch retired, which congratulations to her back in the fall, late fall, early winter. And Celia Howes joined the bench. Alton Harvey will be joining us as a new commissioner, starting this next commission meeting, which is scheduled for March the 17th. And he will introduce himself more completely, and we will have a more complete introduction at the Public Defense Services Commission meeting on the 17th. I also want to let everybody know that Bradley Meyer has joined OPDS as an information technology specialist. He comes to us from Enterprise Technology Services in OJD. So he's got about 10 years of experience in IT and in Oregon State government IT. So hopefully he will help shore up some needed improvements in our IT systems, which ultimately, as you all know, is how a lot of you have to interact with OPDS. So anything we can do to improve our services there, I'm sure, is something that we're all interested in. We have several new attorneys who have joined the Office of Public Defense Services, and they are going to be and are in the process of helping us stand up and implement our new compliance, audit, and performance division, which is right now on schedule to be fully operational starting in the early fall in September. But we're bringing them on now as the legislature has financed for these positions, so that they can get themselves sort of embedded within OPDS, get to learn what we do, how our operations and data systems and everything operates, and become familiar, so that when we finally need to stand things up in September, they are further along than they would otherwise be. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to first to Lori Bender, who many of you probably already know. She has been brought on as our criminal trial chief counsel. Lori, why don't you introduce yourself to the community that already knows you?
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Most of you may know who I am, but for those of you that don't, I have been practicing mostly in the Portland area, Multnomah County, for over 33 years. I started out as a research student at Metropolitan Public Defender's Office. And then I was a certified law student out in Clackamas County for a year before joining Metropolitan Public Defenders downtown in Portland in 1988. I served as a staff attorney there for over, I think, 6 years before leaving and joining 2 former MPDers in a small firm. We were part of the Portland consortia in some respects, and we did mostly juvenile delinquency and dependency cases. And we managed the small contract firms out in Columbia County for a short stint. And that was before OPDS really came into being. Then after about 2000, I have been in private practice. So for approximately 20 years, I have practiced in a number of counties, mostly doing death penalty, homicide, and I've been on the federal panel for the last 20 plus years. So I'm joining this team. I'm hoping to provide great support for the providers out there in your CSS requests, attorney certifications, attorney compliance. I'm hoping to get a virtual law library resource in place and to provide greater training, mentoring, and support to all of you out there. So you might want to get my number and my email address and start using my experience to help you with your cases.
Great, thanks a lot, Lori. And as you can all see, so what we decided to do here was go with a new recent law grad who has no real trial level experience in Oregon here. Now we're really happy to have Lori and all of her experience, and I'm sure that will help all of you out in our provider community to have someone on board who's basically done all of the work that you guys do here in Oregon. So I'm really happy about Lori joining us. Next, I want to introduce Shannon Flowers, who's previously been our interim juvenile chief trial counsel, and that has now been made permanent. So Shannon, why don't you reintroduce yourself to everybody? She is now our permanent chief juvenile counsel, or at least as permanent as I'm capable of making it.
Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Flowers. I know many of you, I think. I started with the agency actually back in 2008 and helped start up the juvenile appellate section and was there for many years. Representing parents in juvenile dependency and termination of parental rights cases. In doing that work, I also consulted with many providers over the years about, specific cases and issues, whether we had a client in common or not, and did a lot of CLE presentations too. And that really led to, in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, when we got some limited duration funding, stepping into a role providing training and technical assistance to juvenile providers throughout the state. And then in the fall, as Steve said, I stepped into this current role on an interim basis. And part of what I'm doing, is all the CAP work that we've been talking about, focused on juvenile representation and practice throughout Oregon, but also managing PCRP, the Parent-Child Representation Program, which many of you are familiar with. I'm really excited to be in this new position. Much like Lori, my focus is helping you all and providing support to improve practice throughout Oregon. I know in all the work that I've done with OPDS over the years, there's lots of good work being done out there. And I know all of you, my experience has been that the vast majority of providers are really looking to do better work, improve all the time, be more current on the case law, look for those novel arguments. And I love that. And I'm here to support that. I want to do what I can to help you with those things. As Lori said, the things, and Steve said too, I believe, things that are shifting over from general counsel to our new CAP division are complaints, but then really the attorney qualifications and case support services requests, providing support to that team that really deals with the vast majority of those. So if you have questions, concerns, issues that crop up, or you just need more information with respect to juvenile cases, I am the person to tap and sort of see what we can do to help you out. If I don't have the answer, I will do my best to get you the answer, get you to the right person. I'm super excited to be here and to work with all of you in this new endeavor. I'm really looking forward to what we're able to do, working to improve practice throughout Oregon. Thank you.
Thanks Thanks, Shannon. And yes, just so it's worth emphasizing something that Shannon said, which is previously a lot of all of our attorney positions within OPDS were under general counsel. We are now in the process of doing this internal restructuring. It's in progress. It's not done. It's certainly a transition. But what we are doing is trying to take all of the program management duties, things that interact with the provider community, with all of you, and move it under the CAP division so that our general counsel becomes an actual real general counsel, which is providing internal legal advice to me and to the agency. And that the CAP division and the folks you're now meeting, and hopefully that we will be adding to the CAP division, will be the external facing and who you all interact with, at least at the attorney level within OPDS. And finally, continuing along on our theme of hiring brand new graduates right out of law school with no actual real world experience, our Shannon's Chief Deputy Juvenile Trial Counsel, K.O. Berger. K.O., please give an introduction to everyone to you.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm K.O. Berger. I most recently have been mentoring attorneys who have had waiver motions filed in juvenile delinquency cases. I helped get past Senate Bill 1008. Prior to that, I was doing capital defense and representation of juveniles charged with aggravated murder. I did that for about 15 years, and for about 15 years before that, I worked at Juvenile Rights Project, which is now known as Youth Rights and Justice. I'm looking forward to continuing to mentor attorneys on delinquency cases, answer all of the weird delinquency questions that you may have, and help people with waiver motions that are for youth that are facing waiver motions. So I'm looking forward to working with everybody. Thanks.
All right, thanks, K.O. Moving right along, I want to bring on Ralph Amador, our Budget and Finance Chief, to give everyone an update on billing issues and our billing system. Ralph.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ralph Amador with the Budget and Finance Department. Talking about a couple things about the billing and accounts payable issue. So accounts payable processing time, I just need to say out the gate that we understand that historically payments have been much shorter. Longer payments are a result of processes that have been added to actually ensure payments are correct and valid. And this is in compliance with legislative direction and best practices. Payment processing time has necessarily lengthened. And at this time, we don't anticipate where OPDS will return to the immediate, at any time, immediately paying of invoices. That's just not possible because of the things that we've had to implement in order to comply with legislative direction. As of Wednesday, close of business, which is March 2nd, 2022, our processing time is 37 days. We have recently made 2 changes to the process in an effort to increase efficiency without sacrificing the required elements of audit and accountability. But just to take the good with the bad, in the month of February, there were 2,760 successful invoice submissions, and that was a total of $4,263,465 that was sent out to vendors and payments just for the month of February. And we're probably on track to do more in January. So just trying to give folks a little bit more perspective. A couple things that I would like to talk about as far as getting people billing contact avenues. As always, normal invoice inquiries outside the submission process should go to the accounts payable box, which is accounts payable at opds.state.us.or.us. But please make sure that when you send us an email to this box, that you include the assigned invoice number and/or a case number or CS number in the subject line, so we know what you're talking about. That'll increase efficiency there. If you're experiencing billing issues that have been longer than 30 or 40 days, please email the OPDS invoice issue box, which is OPDS.ap.invoice.issues@opdsstate.or.us. The other thing I'd like to talk about is for discovery issues. If you have discovery issues or questions, please send those questions to the accounts payable box. But on this one, if you could write discovery as the first word in the subject line, that'll flag that in that email and get it routed to the appropriate teams, which is me. So I call myself a team. CSS invoicing issues. There was about a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, there were some issues about submission in CSS, in the CSS form. And so with that confusion of submitting the invoice, we heard the concerns and we made changes to the instructions in the policy to help clear things up. Providers need to submit the original CSS approval form, and there's no need to fill it out to match the invoice. But please see the case support services notice that was sent out on February 11th. And it's posted at the OPDS website. And please, and you can also, when you do the submission process, there's the policies actually there on the right-hand side where you can review that as well. So,
Ralph, if I could just jump in here just for a second, I just want to emphasize this. You can all see on this slide who to contact and where to contact for these specific issues. Please, please, please. Don't contact or talk to your contracts analysts about issues in these areas. Calling me or emailing me or Autumn or other folks within OPDS, it's just not going to get you the answers and the information that you need in a timely, accurate way. So I really just want to emphasize, please make note of this. Go to the website and look carefully. Make sure you're contacting the right department in the right place, so that because that's what causes confusion and where you start getting different answers on different things. And then obviously our communication isn't as good with you all as we would like it to be. So it helps us out and helps you out in terms of getting accurate information if you make sure to contact the right people about the right issues so that the information is accurate. Sorry, Ralph, didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to emphasize this.
I'm going to interrupt too, just to say that I've confirmed that we can share these slides at the end of the meeting and as a part of the meeting notes and the recording of this meeting, so that they're easy to access when people want to reference them back if they didn't get a chance to write them down.
with that, I'm done. Thanks.
All right, then moving along, let's move to the financial update. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully Autumn or someone will tell me if you cannot see what is the front page of what we sent.
All good.
Good. This is the full report that we sent to the Legislative Fiscal Office and to the legislature through the co-chairs at the time of the Joint Committee on Ways and Means. And you can see it was CC'd to LFO, the CFO, and everyone appropriate in state government. This is our full, as you can see, I'm scrolling through fast, just as you can see, our full financial report. It is available on OLIS. It was also presented to the Public Defense Services Commission at the January meeting and as part of the materials for the January meeting that should be available online if you look up the PDSC January meeting. I just want to really quickly go through a very quick summary of this so everyone understands the act has an accurate return, an accurate understanding of our financial condition. So here you can see on this page, this is our general fund with, it used to be only 3, it is now 8 different divisions that line up with our business services.
Steve, can you zoom in just a little bit? It's a little small.
Okay, let me see if I can increase it. Thank you. let's see if I can get in between. Is that bigger?
That's much better.
Great, thank you, Autumn. So just so you know, this is a budget document, so it's a little bit the reverse of what you may normally be seeing, in that the amounts in parentheses are actually surpluses, and the amounts that are not in parentheses are deficits. As you can see, in our total general fund, we have a $76 million deficit if we just continue straight line spending out through the end of the biennium, which is June 30th, 2023. So there's a $76 million deficit. Now we are of course very hopeful, and Autumn will be talking about this more later, that we get all of the $100 million holdback between now and the end of the biennium. Maybe all at once, maybe in bits and pieces, depending on what the legislature decides. And obviously the legislature is the decision maker here. But if we, assuming for the sake of argument, we do get the entire $100 million holdback, it might initially appear that, gee, that would wipe out that $76 million deficit and give us a $24 million surplus. However, that is unfortunately not the case. Of that potential $24 million surplus, $8 million of that is already budgeted and forecast and planned to go out to all of you, to the provider community, in the form of a 3% inflationary increase coming in as of July 1st to match what state agency employees, including OPDS, got by law, not something we requested, asked for, or participated in. We simply got it along with all other state agency employees, the 3% COLA that state agency employees got. So we have a 3% inflationary increase for all of the attorney provider community to try and match that. And then another $5 million is dedicated to harmonizing and adding to the administrative support that we provide to all of the nonprofit public defender offices and the consortia. So that takes care of 8 of the 24 million, bringing us down to a $16 million potential surplus. However, if you scroll down and you get to non-routine expense division, again, this is a budget document, and that's the way the legislature looks at it from the 21 spring session. It has now been renamed Case Support Services. So for us internally, it's Case Support Services, and hopefully will become that going forward, beginning after this next March 2023 legislative session. If you look in this section right here, you will see this reflects as of November 30th, 2021. The agency currently has about a $50 million outstanding encumbrance of unpaid CSS authorizations. So that is $50 million as of November 30th, 2021. In addition, if you look at the sentence above, we are currently increasing that at the rate of about $1.7 million per month, because we are approving authorizations at $4.2 million a month, but we are only paying out invoices at $2.5 million a month. So if you carry that out from November 30th to June 30th, 2023, the end of the biennium, that gets you to $78.5 million in money, invoices, and approvals that are outstanding that we have to be prepared, will be invoiced, and will come in. Even if only 50% of those invoices actually come in and have to be paid out, that's still around over $39 million, which obviously 39 million is well more than 16 million. And certainly the 78.5 million is a lot more than the 16 million. So we are looking at a significant deficit of, at a minimum, in the tens of millions of dollars. So there is no surplus. There is a deficit, and it's in the tens of millions of dollars. And we are working with Legislative Fiscal Office and the legislature and the Ways and Means co-chairs to try and address that over the course of the rest of the biennium. And we may have to go to the May September and December e-boards before the spring long session in order to get additional money in order to be able to fulfill those obligations. And remember, these are invoices for services for you all. This is for your investigation, your experts, all of the things that allow you to do the work on the cases. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, but I just wanted to give you all that summary so that there is clarity within the community about what our OPDS and PDSC's current financial position is. There is no surplus. We have a deficit. It's in the tens of millions of dollars, and that doesn't even take into account what you all saw in the ABA report in terms of attorney shortages. So what you all are experiencing is what we are experiencing as well, which is that we have shortages. We do not have surpluses, either in capacity. The only place we have a surplus is in cases and workload. That is the only place that there is any kind of a surplus. All right, that's the financial update. Autumn, I'm going to turn it over to you for a more full legislative update.
Thank you, Steve. And I want to say good afternoon to everyone. I know that you're taken away from your lunchtime to be with us, and so we appreciate that. Except for Karen, it looks like is on a tropical beach. So thanks for taking time away from your pool time to join us. Anyway, moving on. We are wrapping up the end of the legislative session. There's still bills being passed on the House floor right now. I've been monitoring on my other screen what's happening. The House was meeting this morning and they stopped reading bills. So anybody that's a legislative watcher, they have moved on to just saying the title of the bill instead of spending up to a couple hours actually reading through the full bill. So that means things are going to start moving a little smoother. And it means that the wheels are greased to get everything done. The first thing I want to talk about is generally the budget process for those who haven't been involved in legislative budgeting before. Now, our state agency, OPDS, has really started to be on the regular cadence of the legislature. So that means that we presented to the Ways and Means Committee on several letters, which were essentially, for those letters, financial asks in January. So those were during the legislative days in January. During that time, we were in front of Ways and Means and we talked about funding for Senate Bill 578, which is the guardianships and conservatorships. We also talked about needing another juvenile appellate defender because of increases in that regard. So those are both things that were already presented back in January. They held off on the decision-making of the money for them, recommending they be added to our budget that is now fairly finalized and is now presented as a part of the legislative process. We've been primarily watching the budget committees, so Ways and Means is the whole budget arm. There's been a ton of stuff happening policy-wise and some good stuff. Some not as good stuff. There's been definite shift towards we care about public safety. We don't care as much about criminal justice reform, but you're going to get that update more from OCDLA. This meeting is already pretty packed, so I'm not going to go in and belabor all the policy stuff and just focus on the money with you guys. I'm also going to share my screen, which means I need to move this screen out of my way, so that we can talk about the document that was actually just recently sent out through our, what we call our MailChimp newsletter. You just may know it as the emails that come from OPDS. But this is the document that I'm referencing. So this is where we are at. Right now, these are all listed as a part of 5202, which is the House bill that's the budget bill, also called the Christmas tree bill, which at the end of the session jams all of the changes to the budgets across many, many, many different parts. Some of the sections were all the way down in the 400s. So our part is just a very small part of that entire bill, but this pulls out all of the sections. So you don't have to search for defense in that bill and try to find us. We've laid it out here instead. This bill is still waiting to pass through both chambers. I was watching the House floor, and it has not yet come up on the House floor today, but it has passed out of Ways and Means. And like I said, it seems like the wheels are greased to continue through. So for now, we're barring some massively unforeseen circumstances, this is what we expect our budget to look like. So the biggest thing is the 12.8 million. If anyone has been paying attention to the news or the legislative process, that money was asked for and gotten in this bill. It is emergency funding. So it is supposed to provide 18 attorneys caseloads, full-time caseloads after the February session, and then 18 more in July. So this is to do 36 attorneys in total once we pull those both together, including the investigations, the overhead support staff. If you do the calculation of 12.8 million by 36, you're going to find obviously it's more than what you might expect, but it includes all of the support around that. And the direction from the legislature was this be spent in Lane, Marion, Washington, and Multnomah counties. So I say all that to say that we are still in the process of it. It has not yet been allocated fully to us. And so we are still waiting on that. But we have sent an email out to providers in those counties, contract administrators in those counties. So if you would have expected that you should have gotten that email, it was sent out on Tuesday. So look for it. But if you haven't gotten an email and you're a contract administrator in one of those 4 counties, please get back in touch with us and get us the information from that email as quick as you can on the other side. So moving on from that section, you see guardianships and conservatorships. This is something we asked for previously. This was what was foisted upon us last legislative session, but it was not funded last legislative session, so we had to ask for the money this legislative session. They gave it to us with a caveat that we don't actually have someone internal to OPDS funded for this position until July. So there's going to be a little bit of a shuffle internally until then. The other money, the bulk of the money here is to actually pay the attorneys who are doing this work for indigent folks facing conservators or guardianships, which is frankly not work that any of us are doing. And right now we are outsourcing that to the probate bar via the 2 counties that it actually exists in, which is Multnomah and Lane. So I won't belabor that. Juvenile appellate, as we said before, we asked for this money for another attorney. We got this money for another attorney. The next one about the planning phase of the financial management and case management system was frankly kind of surprise money. We gave the information to the legislature that we needed this money to really get our IT in order. And they kind of indicated that they might not deal with it until May, but it made its way in. So this is good news because we can get started faster on this process. There's going to be more money associated with this. This is just to get us started. So we're going to have to continue to report back on the legislature on this as well. The next one, which I think was a little mysterious to me even when it first came down, was the family treatment courts. So this is a deputy general counsel position at OPDS to support the legislature creation of a statewide family treatment court governance committee, starting in July. So the background on this is there was a work group. Our own Shannon Flowers was on that work group. I was attending at times. They suggested expansion of family treatment courts, and along with that expansion, some expansion of PCRP. They actually made that recommendation to the legislature. Part of the recommendation was for this governance committee. The legislature decided not to do expansion into counties that would then get PCRP. So this bill did not create any PCRP expansion at this time, but instead they decided to fund a position within OPDS. Just note, this was not a position OPDS was seeking or asked for. This was just the compromise through all the politics and what ended up. So that's where that money is going. And then the other 2 are really kind of just budgetary cleanup bills. So the compensation plan is that 3% that Steve was talking about before, the COLA. And then the other part is basically the $269,000 that is basically legislature saying you had some extra money. We see you're going to have some deficits. You get to keep the extra money that was over budgeted for the last biennium. So that's my shorthand on that one. I'll stop sharing my screen and move back to where I was in my order of things I needed to say. Okay. The other thing is that the $100 million holdback, some people may have noticed that that did not get released. Instead, we got this other funding. We have been in communication with both the LFO office and the Ways and Means co-chairs. They sort of guide when it's appropriate to be requesting these holdback funds. And right now, the current plan is for May emergency board, which sometimes ends up in the beginning of June, but it's generally the May emergency board. We will know those dates after the legislature ends. That's when we'll be planning to request the $100 million holdback. So that concludes my legislative update section. From that, I would move into the insight report update, and I think Steve's going to kick this off.
Yeah, although the first thing I want to do is say I'm really upset that Lane County was one of the pilot counties for the guardianship and conservatorship money, because I really was just hoping we could just assign that to Brooke to give him something to do in all of his vast free time. We could get him into the guardianship and conservatorship field to help him out there. But that aside, as you all know, we went through an extensive, in the late fall and winter, we went through an extensive stakeholder outreach, which involved surveys that went out to the entire provider community, as well as lots of other groups and stakeholders. And we'll have a slide on that in a moment. Just so everyone knows, that report is in the final preparation process and is going to become public and be presented at the March 17th PDSC meeting. It will be part of the meeting materials, so you will all be able to have access to it publicly. And so we're looking forward to that report. There's not going to be any huge surprises here. As you can all imagine, the top line things were everybody's caseloads are too high and the compensation is too low. Big surprise. I'm sure that comes as a big surprise to everyone in this group. But those were the top two headlines, or things that we know. But we also did get a lot of additional information. And that, again, will become public at the March 17th PDSC meeting, and it will be part of the meeting materials so that you can all have access to it. I want to turn it back over to Autumn to just go through and give everyone an overview of the process that we went through. And this is all going to go into our long-term strategic planning process. So all of the input we got from all of you and all of the people who work for you, investigators, mitigators, experts, and the rest of the indigent defense community, we really appreciate. Autumn, do you want to go to your overview?
Go ahead. Yeah. So this whole section is a real overview of stuff that many of you, if you've been paying attention over the last little while, already know, but always good to review it. And I was pretty integrally involved in helping to craft the survey questions, as well as figuring out how to assign people to these various categories that you can see here on the top, which is online surveys. You can see that we have reached out to clients, providers, our partners, and OPDS staff. The providers include not only attorneys, but everyone else that gets paid through the CSS or formerly non-routine expense money source. So we've got the survey response data at the bottom, so you can see the breakdown of the survey responses from the providers section of that survey. So we've got the pretty equal responses from those three groups. I won't read the slide to you. You guys can see that. We did do 15 individual interviews with a broad swath of people from across all kinds of different agencies and all different backgrounds. We also did focus groups. So focus groups were 10 to 15 people asking specific questions. This was all done by Coraggio. I just want to note the agency staff was not involved in facilitating these focus groups, but We did stakeholder organizations, which you can see a big long list of stakeholder engaged organizations listed there. Many of the people in those groups participated in the stakeholder organization focus group. Definitely including OCDA, definitely including OCDLA and ASME. I know that we had people from the Foster Parent Association. There was a lot of involvement in that particular focus group. We also had a focus group that was mostly consortia admins. I believe there might have been some solo practitioners in there. In addition, we had nonprofit admins as a separate focus group. So you can see we reached out to a lot of different groups in order to try to get as much information as we possibly could. So this is just to lay it out visually so that people can see where it came from. And like Steve said, the final reveal is going to be later on this month. Oh, sorry. I do want to add one other thing, which is that with the client survey, the update right now is that we have nearly 900 responses, and those survey results are going to be analyzed as an amendment to the report, so it won't be released on the 17th, but that will be included in our strategic planning. And we want to thank everyone who worked really hard to try to distribute that survey because we got some really good results.
All right. Thanks for that update, Autumn. And the only thing I would add is so that all of you can see, there was a broad outreach. No one was excluded. Everyone was included as equally as possible. And all of this was facilitated and done through Coraggio so that it would be independent from the agency, so that we weren't managing or controlling or picking the people or having any influence over who was involved, where we got responses from, and in how all of this was created. So we will get the results just as you all will, and then we will be able to, incorporate that into our strategic planning process. Next thing I want to move on to right now is do a real quick update on the contracts. And there's not much really new here. It's just to reiterate some things that we have already previewed, but that I do want to reiterate. There will be, this contracting cycle will be different. It will be later, and there will be a lot more, there will be significant changes in the contracts. One of the things that we are currently all operating under the stress under, and that we see the results of in the backlog of unrepresented clients, is part of that is a result of the current contracts that we are all operating under. So it is clear we need to make some changes to the current contracts, because if we just redo the contracts the way they were done the last time, we will all find ourselves back in the exact same position we are all in now, which is not where we want to be. So we need to stop banging our head against that same wall and see if we can make some adjustments to improve things. As I indicated, we have factored in that assuming we are successful in getting the $100 million holdback, that there will be a 3% across the board inflationary increase for the attorney providers to match what happened in state agencies, and a 5% across the board for administrative fees, or to reimburse administrative expenses. We will not be going, because we're going to be later in the process and making these changes. We have just internally within OPDS started to look at the contracts and to start trying to develop contracts to make these changes and make these improvements. This is going to take us more than a month. This is going to take us much more in the month to 6 week to 8 week time period. Therefore, what we're going to do is we're going to try and streamline the process on the back end. Instead of having a full RFP process, we are going to get as far as we can get in terms of developing a contract model. Then we are going to send it out to the provider community and start engaging the administrators of the consortia and the nonprofit public defender's offices and our other contractors, and try and then refine that to the ultimate contracts. So what we will do is send out the best model that we can come up with ourselves internally, with the idea that it won't be perfect. It won't be where everyone wants, but we will get as far along as we can get internally, then distribute it out to the community, and then engage in a dialogue and a back and forth with the community to refine things to get to the ultimate contracts. So we'll go through, so we'll get that out, and then we'll do an RFQ process back where we then engage in this dialogue between sort of mid to late April and the end of June, when we need to have contracts finalized and signed so that they can be approved by the Public Defense Services Commission, so that we're ready to go July 1st. And again, they won't be perfect. What we're shooting for is improvement every time we go through this process. As I've also, I think, indicated to everyone, my anticipation, I'm happy to hear back from the community on this, is that this year we will be doing one-year contracts. And one of the primary reasons for that is we could do two-year contracts, but I think you all well know that whatever's in that second year, you can pretty much disregard, because it depends on what happens in the March long session and what our budget looks like. Once we come out of the next spring's long session, and we're at the end of that, and we know what our biennium budget looks like, then we can take a look. Then we can align our contracts with the two-year budgeting statewide budgeting cycle, and then we'll have more predictability. So that's where we're at on contracts. So be looking for something sort of in the early to mid-April time period, getting out something out to you all, and then engaging in a dialogue. I think, Autumn, that completes everything on the agenda, and I can turn to the Q&A. Am I correct about that?
Yes, and I just want to make sure that everyone saw in this announcement for this meeting that we asked for questions ahead of time, and that we prioritize those questions. We're kind of already over time, so we did get a lot of questions ahead of time, so we're going to try to run through them pretty fast, but I doubt that we'll have much time after that.
Thanks, Autumn. And one thing I did forget to mention, I did want to let you all know, over the course of the next month or 6 weeks, as we're developing the contracts, there will be more requests for information and data, because we're working with LFO and they make requests on us. And so we have to pass along those requests because we have to meet their requests. And we are hoping that then we will be able to work with LFO and OJD and have a meeting at the end of the process to sort of flesh out where we've arrived at before we then move forward with the negotiations. But let me turn to some of the to the questions that were sent in ahead of the meeting, which we very much appreciate. And the first one indicates is a question from one of the consortia administrators. It indicates, back in June, when OPDS ran out of money for sub-providers, and Ed Jones had to make phone calls asking for money, there was an agreement with, I guess, the Marion County Consortia to delay half of its June payment into July. In exchange, there was to be a complete public accounting of what happened and why. When will we find out what happened? The only accurate and truthful answer I can give to this is we won't know. The people that were involved in what happened with the shortfall, everyone that was involved in that is no longer with OPDS. It's the past. I don't know that it's worth spending a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what happened. Those folks are no longer with the agency. So I don't know, and they all probably have their own individual views on what happened, which will be different with everybody. But the fact of the matter is, in terms of accountability, there isn't any more accountability than heads have rolled. And so those folks are no longer with the agency. That was the consequence of the problem. There is now a completely new management team with me as a new director, a new deputy director, Ralph Amador, our new budget and finance director, James Conlon, our new IT director. So it's a completely new management team. So that was the result of what happened. And one of the other changes that we have made is that we are now making monthly, every month at the PDSC meeting, as I just went through the financial update, we have a monthly financial update that's public to all of you and part of the meeting materials on where the agency's finances stand as of each month. The next question was a couple part question. Will there be a way for us to keep copies of the new billing forms for things like proof of income for business loans, personal loans, and other situations where proof of income is needed? The answer to that right now is no. You have to keep it within your own business invoices. So whatever you send in through those, you have to keep yourself for your own proof of income. There's no way currently in the current system. It may be, as we indicated, we did get some money from the legislature to jumpstart a new financial and information management system. That's just a jumpstart to start getting the project underway. It has to go through the state's stage gate process, which is a months-long process. We're talking four to 6 or 8 months. But if we do get a new financial and information system, hopefully that will allow that sort of thing to occur. The second part of the question was new billing forms require more tedious repeated work that providers either have to do or pay someone else to do. What's the benefit to the provider? The forms are no more or less long or ask for any more detail than any of the previous forms. It shouldn't create more work than the previous form. The new form is uniform for all providers, all provider types, whether they're attorneys or non-attorneys, and it also captures travel. So if you're having issues or the people who work for you, investigators, non-attorney professionals that are working for you are having problems with the forms, you previously saw, and part of this, there's a way to contact us if you have if people have questions about filling out the forms. It may take a little bit longer just because they're new, but once you get used to filling out the forms, they're no more lengthy or detailed. The next question was a 3% COLA was mentioned at the last provider call. It's not actually a COLA, it's an inflationary adjustment. But in any event, will this rate apply to hourly folks such as mitigators and capital lawyers who had not been contractors for years? No, right now it only pertains to contract providers. So that's where the 3% is. Depending what we get out of the next spring's long session in terms of a budget, we can look at going out from there. But as you can see, saw before, we are already in a deficit of tens of millions of dollars. So we're doing the best we can in terms of pushing as much money out to the provider community as we can. But obviously there are limits. The next question is a lengthy question about the billing process, the billing timelines, and just so everyone's very clear, in terms of invoice turnaround timelines, as Mr. Hamador said, it is never going to go back to where it was being turned around in a couple of days. The problem with the couple of days was that meant there was zero oversight. And obviously we saw where that all led. Legislative Fiscal Office and the legislature has made it clear we cannot operate that way. So if we are going to review things and provide the kind of oversight that we're supposed to be providing and that LFO and the legislature wants, it's going to take time unless they give us armies more of employees, which they haven't done. So we are sticking with the current state standard, which is 45 days. We are, as you all know, we are aiming to do better than that. We're trying to get to where it's 30 days because we recognize that that is a billing cycle for bills that the private sector often uses. But the state standard is 45 days, and that's our primary baseline. But if we can do better than that and get closer to 30 days, we're going to try and do that. But it will never go back to where it gets turned around in 3 to 5 days because that did not allow for any oversight, which we now need to do. Moving along. In terms of, it says, is it 42 calendar days or 42 working days for AP processing times? It's 42 calendar days. Says, next question is, can you post online your provider information homepage, the number of calendar or work days that is taking to process payments weekly or more often? The answer is we can't spend more time. We don't want to spend more time reporting and less time actually processing the payments and getting them out. So we're going to stick with what we're currently doing, which is we will provide you these monthly updates on what our current processing time is. And we're going to stick with that because to do it more often is just going to slow down the actual process in terms of gathering information. The next question is, how often is maintenance going to occur on Friday evenings through Sunday noon? Can you change the maintenance to different times, such as midnight until 5 a.m.? We don't have any, unfortunately, the answer is no, we don't have any control over that. All our IT maintenance and all of our IT support is done through the judicial department, through OJD. That's the cheapest way we can do it. It is the cheapest way by millions and millions of dollars. And by doing it through OJD and saving those millions of dollars, we are able to use that money for other things, such as speeding up our processing times, updating our financial and information management systems, and getting more money out to the provider community. So we're subject to that, but it is by many millions of dollars by far the cheapest way to do things for us. And so we are going to stick with that. The next question is, if a provider receives a clarification email and responds within the required 24 hours, and it is acceptable, does the invoice go to the bottom of the pile and start all over again? No. The answer is no, you keep your place. It says if the provider is out in the field and unable to provide AP or reply to the clarification notice, then what happens to the invoice if not replied to within 24 hours? If we do not receive the clarification within 24 hours, you may lose your spot, but our staff does what they can to ensure you don't lose their spot because they are aware of the length of time you all are waiting. So you keep your spot if you have to get in a clarification. And even if it's done after the 24 hours, we do the best we can to keep you in your spot because we know you all are waiting to get your money, and we'll do the best we can to get it out as quickly as we can. In terms of the AP process, in terms of receiving it, somebody wanted a step-by-step. I think we can post that, but we'll post the answer to the step-by-step internal process. I'm not sure it makes sense to take a whole lot of time going through step-by-step what happens internally. Suffice it to say, it has to go through a multi-step process now, which allows us to maintain the data and provide the oversight that the Legislative Fiscal Office is demanding. How detailed does the provider's invoice activity need to be? I've heard some providers just put meeting or interview and no further details. Is that sufficient? No, that's not sufficient. Providers should be providing a significant amount of detail. We have instructions on the minimum amount of time details required, and the details required listed on the website. If you have questions about particular invoices, you have the access to the email addresses to provide the answers. Can OPDS continue to have meetings about the new billing system until provider payments are more in line with how fast AP was not long ago? As I think we've said, it's never going to return to the couple of days it was several years ago. We just can't do the oversight that's required. We do plan to continue updating on the billing processing times at each provider call. As we previously said, it's never going to go back to the way it was. Finally, I think the last question I have is, last meeting, the executive director indicated something about be prepared to restructure and reorganize. And can we address that? I don't know what this is referring to. I've never talked about restructuring or reorganizing because I haven't gotten that far. I've been here 3 months before I even start thinking about restructuring, reorganizing. I need to spend more time getting familiar with the system. And I think going through this July's contracting process will provide me with a lot of information. And then going through the back and forth negotiations over the contracts and the input from all of you, that's going to provide me with a lot of the kind of information I need before I can even begin to think about that. We are also, as we mentioned with the insight report and our stakeholder outreach, we're going through creating a 3 to 5 year strategic planning process, but we have not even begun to kick that off. So I think the only thing that's currently going on is what I've already said, which is this set of contracts will be very different than the last set of contracts or any previous set of contracts. And we are currently working through that process. And the reason for the changes is this last set of contracts didn't end up working out very well, either for the providers or for the courts or for the clients. And so we're going to need to make some significant changes in order to improve them. So that's the only thing that I'm aware of in terms of significant changes at this early stage. I'm waiting to learn through the contracts process so that I'm in a position to be informed when we start looking at structure and organizational things that's at the strategic planning level. I think that's all the questions I have, and I think that's about all the time we have, Autumn. We're already about 15 to 18 minutes over.
Yeah, it was a big push to get all the stuff in that we could, but we appreciate everyone spending their lunch hour with us, and keep the questions coming, because we appreciate the ability to think about them and get you good answers. So with that, I think we sign off.
Okay, thank you, everyone. As said, send us your questions by email and be looking for information in April about the contracting process. Thanks, everyone.